Okay, I'll get us started. I just want to welcome all our attendees and our panelists tonight for joining us for this webinar. My name is Angela Cooper Brathwaite, and I'm the immediate past president of RNAO and one of the co-chairs for the Black Nurses Task Force. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our webinar, which is focusing on building a mentorship movement for Black nurses. This webinar is the 7th installment in Let's Talk About Anti-Black Racism and Discrimination in Nursing. Now, allow me to introduce Cosita Garway, nurse practitioner and my fellow co-chair of the Black Nurses Task Force. Cosita will go over a few of the items at the Zoom housekeeping task detailed before we get started with today's webinar. We also have Brittany Groom, Health Policy Analyst, and Jean Baynott, Senior Policy Analyst, helping behind the scenes with the technology and responding to your questions. So Cosita, I'll let it pass on to you at this time.
Thank you so very much, Angela, for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Whether you have been participating in the RNAO's previous webinars or are attending for the first time, I will let you know that you can participate by typing questions and or comments in the Q&A or chat box throughout the webinar. You may raise your hand if you would like to speak, and we will unmute your line during the Q&As. Participation in polls is optional and responses will be kept anonymous. So the webinar will be recorded, but only the presentations will be posted on our event page. Tonight's webinar is scheduled to run from 6:30 until 8 o'clock. Doris Greenspan, our CEO, she will deliver the opening remarks. The first part of our webinar will be focused on checking the pulse on RNAO's Black Nurses Task Force. Then part 2 of the webinar will focus on the topic of building mentorship movement for Black nurses. We are delighted to host 4 incredible speakers who will be presenting and engaging in our panel discussion tonight. We have Michele James, Ryan Hinds, Sandra Robinson, and Sharon Nwamadi. And there will be an opportunity for a question and answer period, and we will close the webinar with a few calls to action from RNAO. Please allow me to introduce Dr. Doris Greenspan to welcome you all tonight and set the stage for tonight's discussion on mentorship. Doris.
Thank you so much, Cosita, and welcome everyone again for joining us for this very, very important webinar. And more important even than the webinar is actually that we are tackling the issue of discrimination against Black nurses, our colleagues. This is why it's so important to have your voices. It's fabulous to have close to 150 people again participating. We were a touch concerned because we changed the time. Usually it was at 6:45. And therefore we didn't know if this will change any of the attendance, but no, you guys are troopers and your input is very important for us to continue to do the work. Next one, please, Brittany. So with that, I think Cosita gave you already a bit of an introduction to the evening and what will happen today. And we will continue to go from there. We will update you towards the end in some homework that we have for you related to various issues with the pandemic. Thank you so much. I wish it was an epidemic, no, it's a pandemic. Thank you so much, Cosita.
Thanks, Doris.
Thank you, Doris. RNAO launched the Black Nurses Task Force to tackle anti-Black racism within the nursing profession its organizations, regulatory body, associations, and the broader health system targeted towards and experienced by Black nurses. There are 15 Black nurses, members of the task force, which consist of RNs, nurse practitioners, and nursing students, with representation from diverse nursing careers, stages, roles, health sectors, geographic locations. Our next meeting is scheduled for January the 25th. The webinar series is just one activity of the task force through which we aim to elevate the voices of Black nurses by celebrating their contributions to nursing and healthcare, create a safe space to engage in meaningful and critical dialogue, safe spaces and anti-Black racism and discrimination, and raise awareness amongst the broader nursing and healthcare community. We have developed terms of reference and are working towards a final report contributed to by all task force members. Our 4 key pillars are education and awareness. We hope to enhance people's learning and foster awareness amongst the nurses and the broader public on systemic anti-Black racism and discrimination within the nursing profession. Another pillar is research, to conduct focused research to uncover the lived experiences of Black nurses in Ontario and identify enablers and barriers to address anti-Black racism and discrimination within the nursing profession. Another pillar is advocacy at all levels. We like to propose and advocate for the implementation of strategies to address anti-Black racism at all levels, micro, meso, and macro, across the healthcare system for sustainability and meaningful change. And the 4th one is partnering with allies and stakeholders. To partner with allies and Black nursing community and collaborate with stakeholders leading an initiative in anti-Black racism and discrimination. I will now like to pass this on to Constitutes, my co-chair, who would continue to share the objectives with you.
Thank you, Angela. So tonight our webinar objectives are not limited to, but they will explore definitions of mentorship and the attributes of an effective mentor or mentee. To increase participants' understanding of Black nurses' access to and experiences of mentorship, to discuss what constitutes a successful mentor-mentee relationship. We hope to describe the value, benefits, and outcomes of mentorship for mentors, mentees, and for healthcare organizations, and generate dialogue to help shape RNAO's mentorship initiative for Black nurses. So now we invite you to participate in 2 polls by anonymously selecting yes or no or not sure to the following question. So poll number 1, the question, have you ever participated in any type of mentorship, mentor or mentee? Yes, no, not sure. Thank you. Okay. Okay.
That's an encouraging number, I must say.
Absolutely. Our second poll then is, if you answered yes to the previous poll, do you believe mentorship positively influenced your professional development? And this question applies both to mentor and mentee role. Yes, no, not sure. you may select your answer. Oh, yes. 80% say yes. 7% said no. And 15% say that they're not sure. So that is impressive that there's, we see 80% of people have had this experience and that they found it helpful. So what we're going to talk about, mentorship for purposes of our talk tonight. Thank you very much, first of all, for participating in the poll. To get us thinking further about mentorship, we want to examine what it is and how we might go about it, how we can get more out of it to ensure that our Black nurses have and can get more of it, to ensure that we have access to mentorship opportunities in the health system. There are numerous ways to define mentorship, but one definition is a mentorship is a relationship between two people where the individual with more experience, knowledge, and connection is able to pass along what they have learned to a more junior individual within a certain field. The more senior the individual is, the mentor, and the more junior the individual is considered the mentee. So that's the definition we're working on with tonight, it's just as one of them. Angela will now introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Constitutes. It is my pleasure to introduce Michele James. Michele is the Vice President of the People and Transportation at Scarborough Health Network, where she has worked since 2008. Michele's portfolio includes oversight of human resources for the organization 5,200 employees and executive leadership for diversity, inclusion, and health equity and strategy and information. Michele has contributed significantly to the health sector for 32 years in hospital, the Ministry of Health, and as a management consultant. Former roles include associate partner in IBM's healthcare practice and director of healthcare consulting practice at Prince Waterhouse Coopers. Michele holds a master in business administration with specialization in health service management from McMaster's University and a Bachelor of Science in Human Resources in Biology from the University of Toronto. She is a certified health service executive and a graduate of Rotman's Advanced Health Leadership Program, and she holds an Advanced Good Governance certificate. Michele serves as the chair of the Board of Governors for Durham College and also chairs the advisory committee for the Black Physicians Association of Ontario. Michele was selected as one of the 100 accomplished Black Canadian women for 2020. Without further delay, I will present you, and please help me in welcoming Michele James. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Angela, for that introduction, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm delighted to be part of the discussion this evening on the important topic of mentorship. When I learned several months ago that the RNAO had taken the courageous step of creating a Black Nurses Task Force, I joined into one of the Monday night meetings. And one of the topics that night was actually career advancement. And as I listened to the comments from the nurses, I saw a real opportunity for mentorship to help with some of the challenges that were raised. Multifaceted strategies are needed, but I believe mentorship should be one of those strategies. And as the picture on this slide shows, everyone needs someone to look up to. Next slide. So I think roots are really important to where we find ourselves as adults. My life's journey began in Barbados, and here I am with my favorite doll, which was unfortunately too big to pack in my suitcase when I immigrated to Toronto at the age of 5. But she is symbolic of growing up without seeing oneself fully reflected in society, including in leadership and positions of authority. And I'll come back to that theme a bit later. Next. So the bio that was provided for my introduction tonight kind of makes my career sound very organized and straightforward, and you don't get a real sense of the twists and turns and bumps and moments of terrifying uncertainty that were part of that journey. For example, I did a Bachelor of Science in Human Biology because I thought I was going to become a doctor. I've left and returned to the same organization a couple of times. I've had the opportunity to experience many different aspects of the healthcare sector, doing work that I didn't even know existed when I was making my early career choices. Next. Now, here I am today, Vice President at Scarborough Health Network. If you're not familiar with SHN, as we call it, it's a network of 3 acute care hospitals, and it's the 3rd largest community hospital network in Ontario. Nurses represent the largest professional group amongst the 5,000 plus staff that we have. Next, please. We serve a very large and diverse community, and the hospital's workforce is also very diverse. So as the slide says at the top, diversity is a fact in Scarborough, but inclusion is a choice. And like many healthcare organizations, inclusion is actually one of our corporate values, and we strive to create an inclusive culture. Next slide, please. I just wanted to point out, as was mentioned by Angela, my professional development journey has also included volunteering at chair of the board of Durham College and supporting the Black Physicians Association of Ontario. But I also have 7 mentees at the moment. I say 2.5 RNs because 2 are RNs and 1 is a nursing student. And I think that volunteering is a really important, I always recommend it to my mentees as a way of developing new skill sets and exploring new areas and broadening one's network. So I just wanted to get that in there as well. Next slide. But why is mentorship important? Mentorship is beneficial for everyone. The role of a mentor is often described by the 3 C's: consultant, counselor, and cheerleader. Who wouldn't want those things? But let's zero in on why mentorship is particularly important for Black healthcare professionals, including nurses. One of the reasons is that goal of inclusion that I just talked about is not always fully achieved in our society and in our institutions. Next slide. Here are a few real life stories that Black nurses have shared that highlight a unique collection of challenges. Competency and credentials being questioned, lack of acknowledgement of racism in the workplace, inequities in performance expectations and career advancement. Next slide. Navigating one's career is hard enough without overlaying these other challenges and systemic barriers. So when you look at it with an equity lens, it's clear that additional support is warranted. Mentorship can be one of those extra boxes that you see the folks on the equity half of the slide are standing on to allow them to see over the fence that they could not see over before they had those boxes. Next slide, please. I'd actually like to close just by highlighting 5 tips about mentorship gained through my experience, both as a mentor and my experience as a mentee. A question that I've been asked many times is, how do I get a mentor? And it's simple. Ask someone to be your mentor. Most people love to help others, I find especially in healthcare, and they're honored to have someone think highly enough of them to ask them to be a mentor. So just ask. And seek out people who are where you wish to be. Then look for these qualities: compatibility, Mentorship is typically a long-term relationship, so connect with someone that you get along with and that you respect. Contrast, but you also don't want your mentor to be a clone of yourself or your best friend. You want someone that can be objective and can challenge you. Someone who has some contrasting but complementary experiences and perspectives to your own. Expertise, this may go without saying. Your mentor should be knowledgeable from a career advancement perspective. They may not be in the same field or same job that you're in, but it should be someone who has knowledge about where you want to go and how you can get there. Of course, trust is critically important. Your mentor is someone that should feel comfortable being honest with you about your strengths, your challenges, and your fears. And of course, your mentor needs to be available and willing to mentor you. Third, don't be afraid to surround yourself with as much positive support and advice as you can get. You may need to have more than one mentor. That's okay. Maybe you need a mentor who is a nurse to help you navigate the dynamics of the nursing profession, but maybe you aspire to leadership, and a mentor who is in a non-nursing leadership role could be helpful also. Sometimes you may need a coach instead of or in addition to a mentor. Coaching is more performance driven and usually designed to improve your on-the-job performance, whereas mentorship is more development driven, looking not just at your current job function, but beyond. And it takes a more holistic approach to career development over the long term. So you may need both. Next, be open to diversity. So on this topic of having more than one mentor, it is important to be open to having mentors from diverse backgrounds. As Black people, having a Black mentor links us to someone who gets us. They get our unique experiences. For example, they understand why we agonize over hairstyle and jewelry and clothing choices. They can interpret remarks and reassure us that, no, we're not crazy to be offended by what was said. They'll understand things like microaggressions and the imposter syndrome and white fragility and the emotional tax. They might understand why we're a bit more risk averse and less confident that we can take risk in our workplace and fail with impunity. They'll probably understand why we often feel like our performance can make it or break it for Blacks who might come after us. Also, as I mentioned earlier, because we don't always see ourselves fully reflected in leadership and positions of authority, when it does happen, we naturally gravitate to those people who look like us. All of that is really important, but all of our mentors don't have to be Black. Sometimes we have to look for mentors who have knowledge we don't have, who are in places and at tables we are not, and have access to networks and contacts we don't. For me personally, the first time I asked someone to be my formal mentor, it was actually a white man. He said yes. That was over 15 years ago, and I consider him to be a great friend and a mentor to this day. And finally, it's a two-way commitment. It's a relationship that you enter into for your own benefit, and you do have to put in the time and the work. You have to be prepared to listen, and a good mentor will tell you things that take you out of your comfort zone. This is how we grow. Next slide. So thank you for listening. And I look forward to answering any questions that might come up later. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Michele. Next, we're going to hear from Ryan Hinds. Ryan Hinds is the Community Engagement Lead at Toronto Central LHIN, where he sets and executes strategy to embed the voices of patients, families, and caregivers into all LHIN initiatives. In this role, he also leads the portfolios of Indigenous health and health equity. As assistant professor at the Dalla Lana School of Public Health, he leads the Outreach and Access Program that aims to educate youth from underrepresented communities about careers in public health and health systems through mentorship. For over 10 years, Ryan also supported the creation and functioning the work of Ahead of the Game Mentorship, which is an organization that engages sidelined youth from marginalized communities and provides critical tools and supports to higher levels of achievement. Ryan.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me. Although I might say I think I should have requested not to go after Michele. That would have been probably the smartest thing I could have done today. Great presentation by Michele, and she's touched on a lot of different things. I don't have slides, but maybe I'll start by sharing a bit of my journey as Michele did. So I was born in Guyana, moved to Canada when I was about 8 years old with my family. And so that experience was definitely a shifting one. And I think folks who might share experiences of being born in a different place and coming to a place where you're an immediate minority know what that's like. As actually similar to Michele, I studied pre-med biology in university because I was certain that I was going to become a doctor. And I think that was also because I was not sure of a number of different careers, and currently the role that I'm in, I'm working in a career or in a job that I did not know existed, in a field that I did not know existed. I think when I was planning my career at whatever age it was, I think I knew really all the careers where there were uniforms, really essentially what it was, and so I did not know that there were things like health system planner, and so my journey definitely took a different turn. From looking to become a physician, I took a very left turn into the field of professional athletics. So I was a professional athlete for about 6 years. I played in the Canadian Football League, and then once I retired, mentorship really started to guide me. And while I was playing in the CFL, that's when myself and a colleague of mine developed this mentorship program called Ahead of the Game Mentorship. And so this was around 10 years ago, where we were having conversations and really noticing a gap for Black youth, but specifically Black males, and really thought that we could leverage our own experience to create a program that might help shape Black youth and allow them to not make the same mistakes that we were making. As young men and young Black males, we tend to lean into the athletics, and then during certain times in our high school careers, we become less engaged. And for us, we wanted to provide an opportunity to provide that mentorship as folks who've sort of gone through that experience of disengagement, focusing on necessarily wrong things, and not really planning for our future ahead of time. And so we wanted to be able to influence the decision-making of Black youth at an early age. And so we started this program now. We did that and the program expanded. And so it's been to, over 30 high schools across Toronto, Brampton, Mississauga. And I would say that while it started in schools, and that was a really successful model, the program's now since expanded to move outside of the school model. And we've engaged and mentored hundreds and hundreds of youth to date now. I would say that for me, mentorship has been tremendously influential, whether as a mentee or as a mentor. And so I would say that some of the things that has helped our program succeed and has helped me in a mentee or help a relationship as a mentor is that my mentor has known me. And so our mentorship program, and anytime I engage in any sort of mentorship, we spend a significant amount of time just getting to know each other, and getting to understand, where that person wants to be, where I want to be, because it's very, very difficult to help provide that guidance if you don't know where I want to be, and maybe what some of the challenges that I'm either aware of or maybe unaware of, and things that you may be able to see in me as a mentor or mentee that I may not see in myself. And so there's a tremendous amount of value in it for mentors and mentees, and we can see by the poll we had a little bit earlier that I think people recognize that. I think maybe we'll get into a little bit further in the conversation around how we structure mentorship, what that looks like, details around whether that's valuable to have, or maybe the role that race plays within that mentorship relationship. But I know for me, I'm continuing to add mentors to my list, and it's folks that have continued to sort of guide me along the way. And I would absolutely say that without this sort of mentorship that I've received as a mentee, I would not be anywhere near where I am today. So maybe I'll stop there, and then I'll pass it back to you, Cressida.
Thank you, Ryan. And I would now like to welcome Sandra Robinson to speak next. Sandra has over 27 years of nursing experience. She is currently the interim manager for COVID vaccine clinic at the University Health Network, where she has spent most of her career. She completed a Master of Nursing and Nurse Practitioner Certificate at the University of Toronto in 2006. Her nursing career has included ICU, post-anesthesia care and pain management and research. She has presented locally, nationally, and internationally on topics ranging from sickle cell disease to chronic pain management to the care of bariatric surgery patients. Sandra became a College of Nurses Council member in 2016 and was elected as Council President in 2020. Let's congratulate her on her achievements and welcome her to talk to us tonight.
So I'd like to thank you very, very much for inviting me to speak as a panelist today. I'd also like to applaud the RNAO for establishing the Black Nurses Task Force, an initiative that was spurred on by the need to create a platform for Black nurses to speak out about the injustices in nursing and healthcare, as well as a forum to galvanize Black nurses and nurses of color to take action. The topic of discussion today, mentorship for Black nurses, is an extremely important one, and is definitely a way in which we can create opportunities for Black nurses and nurses of color to be a part of the decision-making and strategizing that needs to take place in order to chip away at the inherent racial disparities that exist both in healthcare as a broader system and nursing more specifically. So I'd like to start out by recognizing Martin Luther King on Martin Luther King Day. And it is important that we acknowledge the contributions that he made to conquering racial inequality while recognizing that we are still fighting for the same things that he fought for over 50 years ago. I apologize for that slide. It's not to standard, up to snuff. So as was mentioned, I have been nursing for over 27 years. And as I reflect back on my career path and my journey, there are several people whose opinions I valued, people who opened my eyes to my strengths and the opportunities that were possible, or to dissuade me from those opportunities that were not right for me. Were these formal mentorship relationships? No. However, they did provide me with a broader lens and perspectives from which to base my career decisions and aspirations. I realized that someone does not have to be a mentor in order to provide you with guidance or a little push. For example, when I ran for, my apologies. For example, when I ran for president of CNO Council, I was actually going to run for VP RN. However, the day before the election, a group of fellow council members encouraged me to run for president instead. They helped me to see that I had the leadership qualities that were desirable in this role, but also highlighted to me that people are watching and making mental notes about how you conduct yourself. Be aware of that and always put your best self forward. As the first Black CNO Council president in over 40 years, it is imperative that I provide mentorship to Black and nurses of color in order to prepare the next CNO Council president of color, or the next clinical manager, or the next bedside nurse who wants to pursue a master's degree. I have several formal and informal mentor relationships that I am involved with, and most of these predate my election as CNO president. The lasting impact that I've been able to make for them has been extremely rewarding for me. The excerpts that you see before you are from a paper that one of my mentees submitted for her master's program. She is a nurse of color who wanted to move into a leadership role, and I put her name forward for an opportunity I thought was perfect for her. Unfortunately, she struggled in this role as she did not have the support that she needed to be successful. We had several discussions and she decided to persevere. As we all know, COVID hit and she was placed on the redeployment list. I put her name forward again for another opportunity to which I knew she would excel at, and she has been able to take advantage of unique opportunities that would not have been otherwise available to her. Unfortunately, as people of color, there isn't a lot of opportunity to get that tap on the shoulder because we are not on the radar of people who are making the decisions. However, when you do get that tap on the shoulder, capitalize on it. It is imperative to continually demonstrate the reasons why you deserve to be where you are. It's unfortunate, but the reality is that you will continually need to prove that you are deserving and have what it takes to be successful and a valuable contributing member to the organization. As we move forward with this initiative, we need to encourage one another and build each other up. We have to support each other and work together in order to achieve better, and we also have to hold each other accountable. In a mentorship relationship, the following are what I see as essential to have: mutual respect, similar values, clear expectations of the mentor relationship and of each other, excellent listening skills, and the ability to show off your skills. This is not the time to be humble. The key to being a good mentee is to recognize that your mentor is not there to do the work for you. They're there to help you do your work better. And the key to being a good mentor is to help people become more of who they already are, not to make them more like you. And that's a quote by Susie Orman. And I'd like to end it there and open to questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And I will now like to pass it on to Casita, who would introduce.
Thank you so
the
much,
next-
Sandra, for that great presentation. Last but certainly not least is our speaker, Sharon Lamadi. Sharon is a McMaster University BSCN graduate and the current Policy and Political Action Executive Network Officer for the RNAO Hamilton chapter. Sharon works full-time as nurse manager for Bayview Family Practice. In the past, she has worked in acute care and inpatient emergency and psychiatry. Sharon is passionate about health equity, anti-racism in healthcare, and is an advocate for health systems reform. Sharon.
Thank you for the introduction.
You're welcome.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. So I also don't have slides, so I'm just going to go through my points. To begin, I just want to talk about what I think my definition of mentorship is and the attributes of an effective mentor or mentee. So to me, mentorship is the act of guidance. Ultimately, the mentor is often more experienced in some way than the mentee, although I find it to have a successful mentee and mentor relationship, there has to be some sort of mutual benefit. The mentor is going to pass along the knowledge and the mentee is going to help the mentor grow in their ability to teach and to nurture. The mentor has to be knowledgeable, an effective teacher, patient, supportive, and they need to provide honest feedback. And the mentee has to be willing and ready to learn and make changes, and they have to be motivated and confident in their own abilities. Now, in terms of access to mentorship for Black nurses, to say the opportunity for mentorship is slim would be an understatement. For me, while in school, the only opportunity that I had to actually interact with a Black nurse was in my final year in my last placement. That was a single Black nurse I've saw in an entire 4 years, and it wasn't even a faculty at all. I did not see any Black faculty. It was one of my preceptors in the hospital. And having a Black preceptor was one of the few times I was actually able to build a relationship with an educator. There was a lot less fear of doing something wrong and a lot more empathy. This was somebody who looked like me, who could relate to my unique experiences of being a Black person working in healthcare. My non-Black counterparts didn't have to deal with microaggressions or overt racism from patients, from staff, from educators, and they didn't have to deal with feedback of being unapproachable or too aggressive or not talkative enough, because apparently as a Black woman in the workplace, you can only be loud and aggressive or quiet and not a team player. I think a big part of me starting my career in mental health actually had to do with the fact that I had a Black preceptor for my mental health placement. Now that I'm settling into my new role, in this role, I was also taught by a Black nurse in my orientation, and it was another Black nurse who encouraged me to apply. And there in itself shows a system of support. Within the Black community and really all ethnic communities, there is a system of support. Black people are community minded. We treat people we've just met like family, and there's something that makes Black mentorship very unique and very special. We fundamentally want to see other Black people succeed so that they can be examples for the new generation, because really it never gets easier walking into a room or a floor and being the only Black person there. Now, to establish a successful mentor-mentee relationship, it requires a few things. Number one being trust. You have to actually trust what the person is saying to you and feel safe in what you're doing. It also requires knowledge exchange between both the mentor and the mentee. The relationship requires time. It requires respect of both each other and your knowledge levels. It requires patience. It requires effective communication. And realistically, it also requires some type of banter. You have to actually enjoy each other's company to an extent. And it also requires clear boundaries and clear goals. Now, the benefits of mentorship for mentors, mentees, and healthcare organizations as a whole really impacts the mentor, the mentee, the organization, and the patients. With medical racism being a very real thing, the benefit of the effective relationship extends past the individual. Realistically, the benefit of mentorship for the organization is patient-focused. When you have effective mentorship, you have staff retention, and then you actually have Black nurses or ethnic nurses in general, and you have these people who stick around and can actually provide care to ethnic patients, culturally competent care. You have the opportunity to have better communications with patients. They can see subtleties that you otherwise wouldn't catch on. And sometimes when patients don't speak English, you have these other nurses who can speak these languages and communicate to these patients. And for the individual, the mentor and mentor relationship benefits are pretty clear. You can achieve your individual goals together. And with this relationship, you've made a lasting connection and you've begun to build your own network and your own community of care. And that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you so much, Sharon. It's been incredible to hear from all our respected speakers this evening. Who you work, you show your work, your different areas of expertise in the healthcare system. You bring a unique experience and perspective on the topic of mentorship. We will now pose a few discussion questions to the panelists for them to respond. We are hoping to limit responses to about 2 minutes or less to ensure we leave enough time for questions and answers from our webinar participants. We welcome you to share examples and experiences in your responses and build off each other responses if that's possible. So the first question I have, and anyone could, start the answering, why and how is mentorship an important consideration for diversity, equity, and inclusion within the health and care organizations? I'll repeat. Why and how is mentorship an important consideration for diversity, equity, and inclusion within the healthcare organizations?
So Angela, I don't know if I can jump in to maybe kick us off. Yes.
Sure, just jump in.
So, I think Sharon really touched on some important points around staff retention and whatnot, and really how it impacts patient care. But I'd also say that, in terms of, setting a standard from a senior position, I think, mentorship allows staff to sort of have guidance in how to, elevate their status within an organization to those of decision-making levels. And really those decision-making levels are really what set the tone for how organizations really proceed. And whether organizations can really be, equity focused, truly anti-racist, et cetera. And, as that being a priority for people of color, especially Black people, you need to be at those seats to have those conversations and really impact those decisions. And so I think in terms of, how this benefits organizations and really why it's so critical in terms of equity and inclusion is because I think, we need to see more diversity and more Black people and really more diversity writ large at those senior management and those decision-making levels. And I think mentorship allows for staff to sort of escalate through those processes and into those different levels.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to add or?
Sure, I'll join in if I can, Angela.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really agree with everything that Ryan said. And as I said it during my talk, I do think that mentorship is an important vehicle for achieving equity. Mentorship is important for everyone, but I think for those of us who are Black or part of other racialized groups, you need that extra push. You need that extra push just to get to the same point that everyone else is at. And that's why I really like that diagram that shows the difference between equality and equity. Sometimes to give people equal access to the same opportunities, it's not a matter of giving everyone the exact same thing. You have to give people what they need. And I think that that Black nurses in particular really need that to help them overcome some of the systemic barriers and challenges that we've heard about tonight.
Can I comment on the points of Michele and Ryan?
Sure. Doris.
I link this also to the important webinar that we had on allyship. And I can tell you, without naming specific people, that I have taken people under my wing, simply, and Black nurses specifically I'm talking, simply because to me the injustice is so brutally obvious actually. People with huge talent, with tremendous capacity, that at least in my opinion, simply because of the color of their skin, do not get as fast ahead as they should, to the detriment, I think, as Ryan said, of the system, of the health system. And also to build on what Michele said, all they need is just a little bit more. They need someone to believe, yes, absolutely, you're right. You can do it, and go for it, girl, or go for it, boy. In my case, actually, no, I had a guy too, so here you go. It's not only girls. And with that, I want to ask the panelists, the four, how does someone white? Well, I guess I have done it, and I have not been, I have not inadvertently, because I never will do it in purpose, hurt anyone. But it can look a bit presumptuous, right? And I do it simply because I see that the potential. I just gravitate to people with potential, and I want to see them fly, right? And it just happened that several of them have been Black nurses, and yes, nurses, all of them. So is there a danger on that? That's my question to Michele, Ryan, to Sandra, to the four of you, actually, to the four of you.
Sorry, Doris, just to clarify, are you asking, is there a danger
on someone white,
mm-hmm.
that identifies talent, right? On and usually it's because it's very young people, right? And people think you need to kind of pave your way in nursing, but if you are white, you don't need to pave the way so much, quite frankly. So is it can Is it okay if a white person actually offers mentorship and offers to open doors?
Mhm.
You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
I think so, in my opinion. Oh, sorry, Sharon. Sandra, go ahead. I wasn't sure if you were finished. Go ahead.
Thanks, Michele. I think it's absolutely okay. I think that many times there aren't Black mentors that are available in leadership type positions who can open doors for Black nurses. So, you know, I definitely think it's okay for a white leader to take a Black nurse or racialized nurse or mentee under the wing in order to guide them and provide them with not only the confidence to be able to want to or put themselves forward, but also those opportunities that might not be available to them.
Anyone else would like to add? I would like to add to Doris, answer Doris' question. For myself, I've lived in 3 different provinces, attended 3 different universities, and all my mentors have been white since I lived in Canada. In the Caribbean, it's a different story. Okay, I had people of my own color who mentored and supported me. But since I came to Canada, all my mentors have been white because during my education, I was the only Black student in my class, undergrad, master's, and PhD. So I was fortunate to have white professors who were willing to put themselves out there to support me as I went through my education and even after I completed my education.
No, I can answer that you are my mentor, so here you go.
Am I?
In many ways, darling, in many ways.
You make me chuckle, Doris.
But you know it's the case in many ways.
Sorry?
I was going to say, Angela and Doris, I would say to add to that, not only is it welcome, but I think it's actually necessary. Like, I think, you know, people currently occupy certain seats where Black people are not. And I think we know that the role of mentors can sometimes be to help pull and open and as said earlier, sort of tap on the shoulder. And so, you know, like I think there's a tremendous value in that, given that there's a certain space that's currently occupied or it's not occupied by Black mentors. So I might say that it's, you know, not only welcome but also necessary.
Okay, so I'll go to the next question, and it is, how is race considered when establishing mentoring partnerships? What is your experience of or thoughts on cross-race versus same-race mentoring relationships? And I guess some of us, we got a part of that answer before, but I'll open it up to our panelists.
It's Michele again. You know, this is a really important question. And I think that's why we don't need to limit ourselves when it comes to accessing advice and knowledge and things that could help us to advance. Why limit yourself to one mentor? Or 2 mentors? You know, have as many mentors as you need and as you can get. And I've often found it helpful to have I need to have mentors that are that understand my lived experience as a Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, someone as we talked about, that could understand the experiences that you're going through and give you advice based on a proven track record of having overcome the issues that you are mentioning. So people that have lived through it, overcome the exact same kind of issues. I think that's invaluable. And I think that Black women need to support each other and Black people need to support each other. But at the same time, as I said, there's a lot to be learned just from going to someone who is at tables that you're not at and who has networks that you're not in.
Mm-hmm.
When I worked in the private sector, I think it was at PricewaterhouseCoopers, everyone was supposed to pick a coach from within the organization, someone that would help them with their career advancement at the company. And I specifically picked a white man. There were very few Black women, to be honest, but there were some that I could have picked. But I picked a white man because we hear a lot about the term old boys network. And it, you know, maybe that's not a positive term, but there was a time when that old boys network did exist in large companies like the ones I worked for. And I wanted to understand things from a different perspective. I wanted to understand what that network was about. Was it even true? And how do I navigate with people that don't look like me? And the person that was best able to give me that information was this white man. But I also had to process the advice that I was given sometimes and put my own spin on it, because there were things that he might suggest that I knew wouldn't work for me. You know, and one of the examples that I think is so important in leadership, because we hear a lot these days about innovation, and leaders are expected to be these people that take risks, and we hear it's okay to fail, and you know, but you know what, that's really scary when you're a Black person, or especially if you're the only Black person. You don't have that confidence to think that you'll fail and that it will be okay. So in every kind of personality dimension test that I've ever done in my career, and I've done many, I always get a low score on that risk taking behavior, because it's different for us. And so when I would get advice from, you know, non-Black mentors about, oh, take a risk or do this or do that, I often had to process that and put it into terms that worked for me, given my reality and my history. So I do think that cross-race mentors, I think all kinds of mentorship relationships are great. Explore diverse relationships, get out of your comfort zone, get as much information as you can, and get people that can give you access to places that you can't get to on your own.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to add to that question? Or? Okay, I'll go on to the next question. Could we have the next question, please? Okay, amid the global pandemic, COVID, of course, I say Mr. COVID, how have mentorship opportunities been impacted? Example, shifting to more virtual-based communication, how has it been impacted?
I'll jump in. I think the COVID-19 pandemic has actually created new and different opportunities. There's new roles that have been developed as a result, and I think there's more of an opportunity to put forward people who might not have had the opportunity otherwise. You know, it's not just redeploying staff to manage COVID patients on the unit. New roles have been developed as a result, and I think it's a perfect opportunity to continue to encourage people to take on those new roles and new opportunities, because there's a new set of eyes, there's a new lens on these roles that are emerging as a result.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, it's Michele. I think that there are lots of ways to continue with mentorship during the pandemic. I think I've picked up 2 new mentees since the pandemic started, and we just talk on the phone or we do Zoom. There's one, maybe she's on the call tonight actually. There was a little window of opportunity when people were able to get together at outdoor patios and, you know, things like that. And so we had one face-to-face gathering, but I can be in touch with my mentees virtually. And it's working just fine. And I've actually made a point of checking in to see how everyone is coping during the pandemic. So you just have to be creative, but it's possible.
Thank you.
I'm gonna jump
I have
in.
a question. Oh, sorry. Go for it, Sharon.
Okay. So I also agree. I think that COVID has actually made it a bit easier to find mentors, because now that you can't actually meet in person, there's an excuse to actually contact people who don't live near you. So you can be in communication with those who say you wanted a mentor in a different country, you had questions about mentoring somewhere else. You can actually reach out to these people, and there's less pressure now because everybody's online. There's nothing else that we're allowed to do. So it makes the most sense.
Thank you. Yes, Doris.
A question. I was writing to someone that I would love to be their mentor. In any case, the person will see it in a few seconds. I just think that some of the people, not even in the task force themselves, are just fantastic. And they're teaching us a lot, us at RNAO, I mean. Do you, the four of you that spoke, or anybody else, do you ever connect between mentees and meet together? Because a constant issue, at least from my end, is time, right? Time is just, especially during COVID, has been brutal. And also, so that's one reason. The other reason is because I think sometimes mentees can learn as much from one another as from a mentor. So I don't know, Michele, your experience, or Sharon, or Sandra, or Ryan, any of you.
Yeah, thank you, Doris. And yes, that's definitely something that I've done. I think over the last year and a half in particular. I have this habit, I can't say no when people ask if I can give them advice or if I can mentor them. I always say yes. So the challenge to me was, well, now that I've said yes to these people, how do I make it work? But I do agree with you that people have, I don't think people always appreciate, especially at a young age, how much they can help each other. And there is an age difference between myself and most of the people that I mentor. So that was another reason for getting them together. And because I talked to each of them individually, I noticed that they had things in common. They had common goals and they'd experienced common challenges. So when I suggested that we move from our one-on-one conversations to a group conversation, that was quite well received, and it's worked well.
I'd just like to add, one of my mentees, and she was one of my former students, was moving into a new area of clinical practice. It was not my expertise, and I arranged for her to meet another of my mentee who has that clinical practice, and she helped this other person to get ahead in her career, and this person who needed that help is doing really well.
Andrew, if I can jump in after you now, I think for me, the very structure of our mentorship program is in a format of group mentoring. And so I would say that there's always been, and we've always experienced a tremendous amount of value from mentees learning from each other. You know, there's a different relationship when it's peer-to-peer versus, I would say, you know, mentor to mentee type of relationship. But there's definitely a tremendous amount of value to that. And, you know, even as we talk about shifting from the sort of in-person to online, and I think, you know, in person, there's a feel you get for somebody, which may take a little bit more time to develop online. But I think, you know, it's definitely not a barrier that's not one that you can overcome, even in sort of the group setting. So I would say, you know, also fully supportive of the group mentorship type of setting, because there is some sort of honest discussion too that happens when it's a peer-to-peer type of format.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So I will now pass the baton, I should say, as an athlete, to Cosita, who would open up the session to all our attendees. Cosita.
Unmute me. Thank you. So thank you very much, Sandra. Michele, Ryan, Sharon, such rich discussion. And we will now open up the floor to the questions and answers.
Jocelyn, did you want to get us started? I see you had your hand up and I've unmuted you now.
I'm not sure at what point I had put my, oh, I think it was a question regarding mentors of a different race. And I wrote it actually down that at the period in time when I was moving up the ladders, if you wish to call it that, there were no Black mentors available. So all my mentors, I said, were white. They saw me, they saw that I had leadership qualities, or they saw something in me. As I think Ryan said, I got the tap on my shoulder. Jocelyn, you need to go and get your baccalaureate, because other people will get the positions of head nurse or clinical instructor if you don't go. And you have the brains and the ability. And they encouraged me, and that's how I went to McGill to get my baccalaureate degree. And it was the same throughout my nursing career. I have to say that I did not have any Black role models around. So it was only people who saw something in me and encouraged me for leadership position, encouraged me to even be, when I became president of RNAO, it was because 2 or 3 of them rang and told me, and I said, oh, no, I can't be. They said, yes, you are. You can. I said, tell me what? She said, oh, you can answer on the spot. Any question you can answer on the spot. So I think I would not want at this stage in our career in nursing now. I know we have more Black leaders. It's just beautiful, the 4 panelists here. I'm so impressed, totally impressed with all of you. And I think we need not close our doors to having white mentors.
Thank you so much.
And if I may add, Brittany, and Dr. Hazayak, also, I am sure we'll take some mentees, and I saw some notes in the chat. How do I get a mentor? And here you go. A lot to learn from Jocelyn too, and from Angela, in addition to the panelists, a lot. And from Corsita, each one, just from knowing, especially I know very, very well Corsita and Angela, from each one to learn different aspects about life, and about nursing, and about just how to be a fulfilled professional.
Can I also say,
I know, Jocelyn, also you would contribute.
Sorry. As we're speaking about the mentorship, also too, sometimes there's informal mentorship as well, relationships. So when you see, for my example, I've had numerous white people tell me that I should go on or, do more education, because those are the people who have been at the fore. But I've also learned from the Black nurses before me who didn't get the positions and didn't get the tap, even though they had the education. So some of that has also built into me a different momentum, I guess, to want to do well for those people who came before me who didn't have the opportunities, or who people felt threatened by. So that's some of the air that I have in my wings. It's just kind of understanding that their experiences had to happen so that I could see and watch and figure it out, and then able to have different kinds of conversations in stairwells of hospitals, because they can't be seen talking to me. So hopefully I can be like, make them proud that their little sister has gotten to where she's gotten to, but that has come from watching them struggle, right? And unfortunately, so hopefully we have more people in positions who recognize us, but also too who are not threatened by our quote unquote successes, because we'll never be where you are. You've already got a head start, so you have nothing to lose. And look at what your legacy is, to leave us behind calling your name, saying this person mentored me, this person did this for me. So that's what you have to offer as well. That's why a lot of the times when we think about the struggles, when you're a mentor, I find it liberating because it's also very selfish for myself being a mentor for someone, because it forces me to learn. It forces me to know and understand what I need to do for that person. So I do it, again, because it's great, but I also love being the mentee, and that's always part and parcel of everything that's going on. And it's the two of them typically are working together, because I learned from that mentor, and I'm also teaching that mentor. Yeah.
Thank you, Corsita. We've got some questions flooding in as well. So this one goes out to all panelists, anybody who wants to answer. How can one get Black mentors to not look at one as competition, but as an opportunity to develop individual growth, even if they may surpass their mentor?
I'm happy to start. So I think it's an excellent question. And I think one of the keys is to choose your mentors wisely. If you're choosing a mentor or somebody who's going to be threatened by you exceeding what they've done, then that's not the right person for you. So it's almost, I think you almost have to do like an interview, determine, you know, in my presentation, I said, you know, determine what the goals of each person are. You know, make sure that you guys are, you're both on the same page in terms of what the expectations are. And if your expectations out of that mentorship relationship are not the same, then that's not the person for you. And maybe they can point you in the direction of somebody else who could provide that mentorship to them. But I think that's key, is to ensure that both people are on the same page.
With that in mind, it's also important to, it's important to understand that the mentorship relationship is meant to be mutually beneficial. So when you're choosing somebody who you want to be your mentor, it's not meant to be a competition. It's supposed to be growth. You guys are still on the same path. And even if you surpass them, it's now you can actually teach them what you know. So it's actually beneficial for them.
Thank you, Sharon and Sandra. We have another one that came in that we haven't touched on yet, but do you have any suggestions for mentorship program sustainability?
So maybe I can kick off. So depending on where that program is resting. So if we're talking about a mentorship program that's within an organization, there must be support from senior leadership. I would say the moment you start something within your organization, that's sort of got to be one of the foundational pieces. And I would say that critical to that mentorship sort of structure. And it depends on whether you want to create this as like a formal mentorship program or whether we're looking at things that are informal. But for things that may be a little more formal, I would say, some of the key pieces would be, I think Sharon explains kind of a symbiotic relationship between mentor and mentee. But I think, making sure that there's I would say almost a vetting process for mentors is really, really critical, because that experience or a negative experience with a mentor can really shut someone off from having or continuing to pursue that. And I think Sandra raised a really good point that not everyone is the right mentor, because the mentor relationship is one that's really, or the mentor position is one that's really, it's almost a powerful position, and you have a lot of influence over someone. And so, you need to be really ready to make sure you take that position and understand what your role is for that. So I would say, to sum that up, definitely senior leadership, but I would say, really critical vetting of the people who step into that mentor role.
Thank you, Ryan. Did anybody else want to comment on that sustainability question?
I would like to comment. Just from experience, both of me having been mentored when younger, not only in this country, in others, and also from having mentored people. I don't think that mentorship relationships need to go forever. I think a difference, I think it's a bit of what Michele spoke before, of having different mentors for different aspects in life, not only at work. And having the comfort with the mentor to, at times, you know, there is no need, and that's fine, right? And at times there is more need, and I think it needs to be fluid as long as no one gets hurt in the process, I think. So to be clear, both from the mentor and the mentees, to be very clear about honoring the relationship, I think is probably the comment. I don't know, Michele, what's your experience, and Ryan and Sandra and
Yeah, I agree, Doris. I think we need different types of advice and support at different stages in our career. The other thing I'm thinking around the topic of sustainability is succession planning, because whether it's a large mentorship program or a small one of the things I've noticed is that often they might rely on one person to keep it going. And then, you know, when Ryan wins the lottery and decides to travel the world, who's going to pick up that mentorship program? So you always have to be, I think if possible, I know resources are tight, but just try not to have the program reliant on just one individual. Give others an opportunity so that you could increase the sustainability.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I have another question coming in. How do you know if one is interested in helping you as a mentor? We did touch on this in your presentations, but to continue on that, what clues can you look for other than what was presented today, especially in the initial stage of the mentorship relationship? And that's open to all panelists. And of course, Corsita, Angela, and Doris.
I would say go with the Michele motto. Ask. I really like, Michele, what you said in that on everything, all of you, the four. But just ask. Don't shy away. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? That the person may tell you, they will never tell you just no, right? They will tell you, I'm too busy now. Can we think later on? Or I remember during the pandemic, someone asked me, and that reminds me that I must get back to her actually today, because the person asked me and I said, you know, said, can we meet weekly? I said, it will be dishonest for me to say we can meet weekly because I cannot even meet with myself these days, but can we meet once a month, right? So ask. I think it's an honor for someone to be asked. It's an honor. It means they found something in you that they think it's inspiring for the person. So I go with the Michele motto, ask.
That's funny. You're right. And I've been lucky and no one has ever said no. And that's why in return, I feel a responsibility not to say no. But the other thing I like about the asking is that it shows ownership and it shows that you're serious. Because I've had two situations where I was actually asked by someone's parent, you know, to get in touch with them. You know, my daughter, you know, needs someone to talk to, or they're not sure where to go in their career. And you know, both times I made sure that I kind of flipped it, you know, we'll have them call me. You know, I'm not going to call someone and say, your mom, you know, asked me to have a mentorship discussion with you. I think it's really important that you decide that you're going to take this seriously and you go after what you want and you ask for it. So even for me to be asked by someone who's not the person to be mentored, I would pause because I really want to make sure that the individual is serious. And like I said, it's a two-way commitment.
Also,
you know, Brittany, I promise I will shush. Brittany and Corsita and Angela, people ask if we plan to do something, and the answer is yes. We will do a formal mentorship program, and it just occurred to me that we will approach you guys, the panelists, just to maybe even to do a focus group so you can help us build that in a way that is meaningful and that is sustainable and strong. And it seems that some of you have done it at your workplaces, so perhaps that can help us too. Sorry.
I'd love to be a part of that.
Fantastic.
Well, I
Thank
think
you.
we almost coming to the end. It's almost.
I think one of our panelists, Angela, sorry, I
Sharon, go ahead.
believe.
Go ahead.
Okay, I actually forgot what I was gonna say, so let's just.
Oh, Sharon, I apologize. I
And I have
apologize deeply.
I have Dania here as well. One of the members of our task force asked a question in the chat box. So Dania, if you want to just ask it out loud, I thought it would be a good way to close off our Q&A.
Sure, thank you, Brittany, and to the panel members as well. So my question is more, you know, so I've had experience too as a mentee and a mentor, and often I'm left on my appetite to see, was I a good mentor? Did she feel supported or he supported, and or was I able to you know, bring some benefits to my mentor with, you know, our relationships over time and such. And so I'm wondering if there are any formal or informal, not to be cliche, but outcome success indicators or measures that we can keep in mind to make sure that we go beyond the basic subjective feel of, oh, how was this relationship, or how is this relationship going, to the panel members, if you have insight on that. That'd be great. Thank you.
Well, really, in establishing a mentorship relationship, one of the first steps is to establish your goals. So your goals, the mentor and the mentee, they have to be clear and they have to actually mix together some way. And then in the end, you can assess whether you did reach these goals and what steps you need to take further.
Thank you.
Well, that's a great place to leave it. So I am going to let you know that we have unfortunately run out of time tonight, this evening. We hope that you all join us again on our next webinar, in which we will be continuing the dialogue on mentorship, focusing on academia environment. Doris?
So very, very quickly, so I don't steal more time from you. I just want to share with you the latest of what we are pushing for. So we did ask for a full province-wide lockdown, as you know, and we wanted to include curfew similar to Quebec. The full province-wide lockdown is there. The curfew remains to be seen what will happen depending on the numbers. We did ask for no reopening of schools about 3 weeks ago, and yes, in January 7, we heard that that will happen in the hot zones. Again, time will tell when they will reopen, and depending on what's happening. What we have not received, and we will increase the pressure. You will see that, well, I will tell you what we have done, but you will see that also tomorrow with an action alert, is support for vulnerable populations, which most of them, sadly or tragically, are marginalized. So paid sick days, we're asking for 10 paid sick days. And yes, the government, the provincial government says we don't want to repeat what the feds are giving, but you all have heard of the situation that it takes weeks until you can access the federal funding, and also it will not be for you to go and get tested, etc. So we are asking for 10 days. And on that, we sent a letter last week jointly with OMA and a few other organizations that is in the website, and it is also in several social media, but you will see an action alert overall on these issues tomorrow. We are also asking for 24/7 vaccination in long-term care. Of course, now there is less vaccines. Let me alleviate, first of all, those of you that got the first dose. If you are a health professional, you will get the second dose within the window. That is absolutely okay, from Pfizer, so I wouldn't be worried about that. in relationship to the vaccination of the nursing homes, residents, most of, well, in Toronto, all of them have happened, but in some other areas, hopefully will happen soon. Same with health professionals, what's happening less and not consistently across the provinces for essential care partners. Those are the one person designated to be with the long-term care resident. The next one, please. Thank you, Brittany. What we are pushing now very, very strongly is to, I don't know if to call it reclaim or what is the word, to put vaccination where it belongs, which with respect, Michele, and I spoke with two CEOs today of big hospitals and they're in agreement. It ought not to be in the hospitals. It needs to be in public health, as always it has been, and it needs to be in public health with primary care physicians, nurses, pharmacists who deliver every single year the vaccination. We have thousands and thousands of primary care and home care nurses eager and ready to get out and give vaccination. So my hunch is that in this Q2, around April, we will have lots of vaccines because remember, Canada is ordering for 4 times the population. So while now we may have a short period of not enough vaccinations, that will not be the case. Likely in April, there will be lots in my view, May for sure, June for sure. So we have been saying that if we were to move 24/7, this province can be done in July, quite frankly, with the entire population. And I also want to make a comment on the issue of vaccine hesitancy, because I can tell you amongst nurses, very little vaccine hesitancy. If in fact, if we were to put a poll here, most of you will say, I'm ready, please give me the vaccine. Me too, I say. So my hunch is that we will have about 80% in the province of vaccination if we continue to pride on those that want to get the vaccine and celebrate them versus focusing on the hesitation. We will do a session in February, and I don't have the, actually I should have the date, but you can look, Brittany, oh, here you go, Brittany is more than ready, and Olivia. That session will be on, we are not calling it vaccine hesitation or hesitancy. We are speaking about vaccines, and we are bringing the top person in my view in the country, which is Dr. Cora Constantinoa. She's just, I could hear her with non-stop, because she can get the most horrific questions about conspiracy theory, and she has a way of responding and saying beautiful question when some of us will probably be going, really, really. And she's just fantastic, fantastic. So go to the website, and if you Google RNAO COVID portal, you will find everything there. Of course, those of you that don't receive the blog that we send weekly, if you are interested, please send a note. That includes you, Michele, and Ryan. I know that Sharon gets it because she is a nurse. And I'm assuming she's an RNAO member, so she gets it. And I know Sandra probably gets it, but the rest of you, if you are interested, by all means, it's open to everybody. And a lot of good information there. And in the portal, all those dates and topics for registration will be open. So that's it for me. And I cannot tell you how just inspired I am as the CEO of where we are going with RNAO with this piece on anti-Black racism and discrimination in nursing. And I know for a fact that we will get flack, no doubt, when a report comes out, that not everybody will agree or concur, that some people will think, oh, but it's not me, I never. Sometimes unintentionally, guys, unintentionally we discriminate, unintentionally. When it's purposeful, it's horrific, but unintentionally can happen, and we all can grow and become better. I know I am growing through listening to all of you, and on behalf of our staff and the board and the members, thank you for the teachings and for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris. And just before we let you go, I want to remind everyone that we are going to continue the conversation you can see on your screens on February 16th. And that will actually be, pardon my typo there, it's Tuesday because February 15th is Family Day. So it'll be one day later from 6:30 to 8 p.m., same as tonight. And we will be carrying on the same topic and going a little bit further into the academia environment. And I will pass it on to Angela to give her thanks and say goodnight.
I just want to thank all of you for participating, the presenters, the participants, asking the questions, sharing your knowledge, skills, and abilities. And on behalf of RNAO and the Black Nurses Task Force, I just thank you and appreciate your informative contributions that you've made tonight on mentoring. And I wish you a pleasant evening, a joyous one. Do whatever is relaxing for yourselves and have a good night. God bless.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.